Welcome to The Other Side of the Bridge with Iron City Paranormal, where they discuss real investigations, first-hand experiences, unexplained moments, and everything that happens when you step off the regular path and onto the other side of the bridge. Just honest paranormal talk, Iron City Paranormal style. And now, here are your hosts, Derrick Smith and Dan Metelsky.
Hey Yins guys, welcome back to the other side of the bridge. We are Dan and Derrick from Iron City Paranormal, coming once again with the other side of the bridge. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you've crossed the bridge with us before, we're glad you're here. So grab a great drink, settle in, and get ready, because tonight we're going to continue our multi-part series on science versus spirits.
Part two.
So in the last episode, Derrick, we talked about quite a number of things that we've touched on before, but we're trying to do like a deep dive into the science behind a paranormal investigation.
Yeah, let's just keep going. I mean, we on a regular basis, we talk about this stuff a lot, right? Like,
yep.
How many times have I said, I'm on my hands and knees looking at things, trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was basically a recap of last week. So it's just a continuation of that.
Exactly. And we're fancy tonight. We are both wearing polos for this episode.
This
is like the next step below like a lab coat.
Let's be honest though, this is my daughter picked this shirt for me. Otherwise I'd just be wearing whatever. So
I thought you looked fancy.
I'm fancy thanks to my 7-year-old.
So Derrick, the last time around we talked about like what we consider to be as close to scientific evidence as what we can gather.
Right.
That's what this whole series is kind of based around.
And really using science to our benefit, right?
Correct.
I mean, not that we're against it. We're not opposed to science. We're using science for our, to further our investigations, to further our evidence.
Right. And we're trying to be as objective as possible.
Yes.
And be quantitative with our analysis rather than qualitative.
Yeah,
right. And that's a hard thing to do in this field because of so many devices that just sell themselves as you're going to catch a ghost.
It's very difficult in this field because, on top of that, there's definitely that. But, on top of that, you go into these things saying, I want to see something. I want to experience something. That alone gives you a certain perspective, right? Yeah. So if you're able to go into it saying, even if I don't see something, that's data, right? Like that's the hard part, because we all want to see something. We all want to experience something. And at the end of the night, if we don't, it's kind of a bummer.
And I think this is a lot, like, we're not unique in this, right?
Right.
We are part of a community of people, of investigators, which are just drastically different. In fact, right before we started this show, I was watching like a clip that said somebody had posted on Facebook, some other paranormal group, sure. And she was having a very similar discussion, like in a short or something about that, and just said almost exactly what you just said, like the fact that even nothing is data. Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything happens all the time like they do on shows and those kind of things. But tonight, like, because we kind of talked about like why it's so important to spend so much time debunking evidence and trying to think what naturally could be occurring that's causing what we're experiencing. But now we're going to kind of go beyond that. We're going to go beyond like, is the building old? Is the floor creaky?
Let's keep pushing
it. Cold outside? Is there like some jagoff going down the street with a motorcycle revving their engine in the middle of Ohio in the middle of the night?
We could talk about that every episode if we really wanted to.
Honest to God. So we're going to go beyond those kind of things, and now we're going to kind of take it and we're going to spin it back on ourselves and how we interpret what we're seeing and what we're experiencing in the moment. How does darkness play into that? How does our own psyche play into that? And really, can we manifest things just out of nothing, or can and can we have an experience or think we see something and then automatically our brains go ghost, right?
Well,
and
there's a certain basis to it too, right? Like we don't rent out a building because nothing happens. We search out these. I mean, there's okay, there's occasions where we, but
no doubt,
more often than not, it's something happened here, so let's go here. Right. So there's already that bias to it. So you're absolutely right. Where if you can go into it with a clear head and, let's just go into it with a blank slate. Let's see what happens. And how many times do you and I even talk about it? Like, oh, nothing happened. We're bummed out, or we're so excited to go to this place because something happened to these people before, right? Like it's there is something to be said though about just going into these things with an open mind.
Sure, and we talked about that like as it pertains to shadow figures, right? I do believe that a large part of shadow figures. Now, I want to say this with the understanding of people hearing that I do believe in shadow figures to some extent, but how much do we manifest those? Like I said, I think we talked about that last episode. I think, I have only ever personally seen a shadow figure in places where they told us we were going to see a shadow figure. How much of that was me projecting, I don't know. So we're going to get into a couple different things here. Like I said, all around those ideas. Are we manifesting them ourselves? We're going to look at like witness, like when we have different witnesses to things, if they don't talk to each other, but they see the same thing, is there credibility to that? All of this kind of stuff. So we're going to let's cross the bridge, get into another night of some discussion, and hopefully open people's minds to what a true investigation truly is.
That's right. Let's hope so.
So do you think that an investigator can actually experience something that never actually physically occurred? It was something that was a question I came across while I was researching this episode that I thought was extremely interesting.
I mean, I think we've proven that happens. You look into something like Mars train station where we expected to be in there for a half hour to hear a cat meow, and that was it. We're out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that turns into something completely different, much deeper than we ever expected. So yeah, I think we've proven that can definitely happen.
Well, on the cat's meow standpoint, I know exactly what you're talking about it with Mars. Yeah. And what I find more interesting is not the cat's meow in the train station like we expected to see, because that's where the mummified cat corpse was.
Right.
But more interesting to that was when we were at the tattoo shop in Mars, and we were not expecting to see the cat or interact with the cat at all.
That's
something started to move our cat ball that we use, and in an EVP we picked her up meowing on the recording there, and we didn't even think about anything until like we were going through evidence, and you were like, "Hey Dan, guess what? I think we got Jesse on this recording."
You're absolutely right with that, because we were not expecting that.
Yeah.
We have heard things about that entire town, basically, with that cat being there, with Jesse being there. But
I hadn't heard about
it.
But I hadn't heard about that until after we did the tattoo shop, and we went to the train station, which was months later, and we kind of pieced it together.
You're absolutely right, and that was kind of part of the. I don't want to say that I hid it from you or anything along those lines, but it's also nice when all of the information is not given. But she appeared, and we were not expecting her to appear. Not by any means.
I wish there was a ghost cat that we caught on like a video. That would be so cool.
I mean,
I'm not a cat person.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. I'm not either. We got some meows quite a few times, honestly.
We did.
But outside of that, we never really got, the cat on camera. But yeah, and with the tattoo shop, we weren't expecting that by any means.
Sure.
And we, when we listened back, all of a sudden it was, this clear cut meow. Like, how do you explain that outside of the typical, Mars being known for this cat, going everywhere,
right?
And what's funny too with that is that later on, probably a year later when we did the social club barbershop, we heard the cat there as well. So this cat shows up not just one or two locations; she's everywhere. But again, not expected.
So a lot of the times when we go to these places, what you kind of like got to the point before we got there, they very much tell us what to expect when we go in a room, which is why we've kind of gotten away from having them go into the ghost stories and just kind of focus on the history of a building.
Yeah,
right? Because we very early on were so biased based on what they told us we were going to experience,
right,
that we kind of let it cloud our judgment.
Absolutely. And I think that hurt more than helped.
Very much.
And what we ultimately ended up doing is, because I'm not as sensitive as you or Aaron, right? So I've kind of taken on the role of, researcher or historian or whatever you want to call it. And I have the stories in my back pocket, so I'll keep them there and I won't tell you guys. You both go into these places where, if somebody wants to tell us a story, cool. I'm it. Tell me. You guys don't want to hear about it. But there are,
and I will say that you do a good job keeping it to yourself.
Well, thank you. I try.
And I can imagine that's extremely difficult, because when I find out cool things like that, I want to share it, right? 100%. I want to tell everybody what I just heard. But so you do a really good job kind of keeping it to yourself.
And it's hard to do because there are pieces where, I want to be able to push it. Right? Like you'll hear something or experience something in a particular room where I've done the research on. And I try to keep it as close to myself as possible without giving anything away. However, what I will say is during investigations, if you hear something or experience something in a specific place that's going to help progress the investigation, that's when I'll throw that out there. Like, okay, let's proceed with this, or this is something that's well known, so let's continue on this path. But outside of that, yeah, I won't say a thing, and I know you guys don't want it, but it is hard, especially early on when we took the tour, like, hey, we're here, let's hear about it. So it's hard. It's hard to say no to some of those things when we're spending the time there at some of these locations. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things. On top of that, though, I'll do my own research, so we know what's going on top of it, and with historical documentation or whatever it may be, property records, deeds, all that kind of thing. I'll try to keep it to myself as much as possible, within reason, right?
Sure.
But I'll kind of allow the investigation to take its own toll, to take its own route, and let it go. But yeah, there is something to be said about having this preconceived notion about some of these locations. Even if it's not that. Even if you go into one of these locations where it's well known, you don't have to do research on it. You already know what's going on in some of these places. So it's hard. It's hard to put those in the back burner and not really focus on them.
Yeah. So on that note, I was actually doing, again, this is weird for me when I say I was doing the research, because you're always the researcher, right? But if I dug up a little bit of some background on it was a fake seance that they performed in 2003 where they had all these participants come in and they staged a seance where they weren't actually performing a seance. They were just pretending to.
Right.
But the people around the room did not know that it was fake, obviously. And we're going to go into this. So there was an actor, and the actor suggested during the experiment that the table was levitating. It never actually did.
It didn't happen at
but
all.
The
right?
actor just portrayed this character and said the table levitated. And then after the seance was completed, after the fake seance was completed, they got everybody together and they discussed what they experienced in the seance. And 1/3 of the people that were in that room, even though that table never floated, they said that the table had moved, even though nothing had ever happened, because of that influence that one person had on them. They concocted the story to fit that narrative.
And is that a suggestive bias?
It is.
Is that a group? Some kind of group? It's hard to say. When one person agrees with something and that they don't want to be shut down.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to say. They don't want to be the ones to say that I didn't experience it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right, and that's not the first time that's happened either. They did these when these seances were a big deal back in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things would occur, and there were situations where they were well documented, right? And certain people wanted to discuss them, and they wanted to scientifically try to figure out what was going on. They would stage these fake seances. So they're not the first ones to do it.
Sure.
But it's a great idea, to be honest with you, because then you can kind of figure out what's really going on here.
Mm-hmm. And none of this is to say that, all ghosts or paranormal encounters and experiences that people have are forced by any means.
That's
right?
not at all what we're saying.
We're just trying to flush out we have to think about these things. And when we talk about confirmation bias and these stories where, I saw that table levitate, but then it really didn't, but then 1/3 of the people did. That is the reason when you hear something on a spirit box, when you're doing the evidence review, you ask us what we hear before you tell us what you hear.
Right. So there's a lot of the time, and we'll get into that later, I'm sure, where, I'll hear something and I'll send it to you and I'll say, hey, I'm not going to tell you, but what did you hear? That's just, that's kind of the situation. That's how you confirm things. But if I told you ahead of time, like, hey, listen, I heard them say this. I heard them say this name, or I heard this date. You're going to listen for it, right?
Exactly.
And that's not what we want. That does not help the situation. That does not help the case at all. And, we've talked about it before, where even a lack of response is data. It's the same thing. When we're hearing something, we're listening to these things. If we're hearing one person hears one thing, and another person hears another. Okay, well, we need to regroup and we need to listen closer, because it could actually be meaningful. It's not just garbage that you throw away. So that's the confirmation part of it. Where if I tell you what I'm hearing, well, then what are we actually hearing? Whatever I want to hear.
Sure. So much of this kind of stuff is, driven by personal experiences first and foremost.
Been there, done that kind of thing.
Talk about sensitivities. I mean, those are the kind of the stories are what get us to an area. They're, of course, are what get us to a place in the, to begin with. But as you know, like some of these locations are so stinking big that there's no way that we can give it a true investigation across the entire location in the number of hours that we have, right? Because so much of it's just sitting and waiting. So we kind of have to use stories, or in Aaron and I's cases, like when we have feelings or we feel energy shifts or whatever, that's what tells us to go to places, right?
Yeah.
And then we can kind of, just because it kind of maximizes our effectiveness during our time.
That's right.
Right. But we can have, when that something is a woman died in this room. When you listen to audio, when you hear things, if we hear something knocking, well, it might not just be a knock. It might not just be a creak. We could kind of concoct in our head that it kind of sounds like a woman's high heels walking down the hall, because we know that there's a woman that died in that room.
Sure.
Right. And that kind of gets interesting, because then we could go all the way into visual cues as well, which we will get into in a bit after the ad break. But then we can start to see the figures as well, and then we can kind of bias that as at the same time. That's
where your mind starts playing tricks. That's where the pareidolia starts coming into play.
Yeah,
you want to see it. And it's not to say that you're lying. Your mind, as a human, wants to put these pieces together, see, hear, experience these things. That's just how that's human nature, right? So, when somebody says, I heard this here, but I read this about this location, it's hard to say, to truly confirm that was something paranormal when they already knew about it. Right. And that's kind of the hard part about all this, because you guys, we need to know where we're going. We need to know where to focus on. We need to know the rooms that are hot spots, as you would. And so that takes research. That takes some guidance. And if you didn't have that, you'd have no idea where we were going, where we should spend time. But at the same time, you already kind of know the stories that are paired up with that. So that's the plus and minus of it.
So another concept of this I think is very interesting is when multiple people, like within our group, have the same thought or the same experience at the same time without talking to each other. I don't know if you remember whenever we did the private investigation for that person that your family. I know it was Aaron's family was friends with, when Aaron and I had feelings and we both got a name, and Aaron wrote it in a book.
Yes, up in that attic
she
area.
Could see. Yeah, she's writing on a notebook, and she wrote down the name, and I was
and you just thought it,
name.
Right? Yeah.
I was hearing a name in my head, and the name that I was getting was Maggie. Well, she had already written on the piece of paper, starts with an M.
You're right.
Yeah, she had written, and then she kept it to herself. And then she's the one that asked me, she's like, do you get a name? Because I was connecting with her for some reason.
There's definitely those situations where we can compare things without speaking that help. And that helps confirm things, that helps validate things. And then when that happens, to your point, with a situation like that, we can then continue with the investigation, and we know the name that we're sticking with, and we know who we're speaking to. And then we can actually, have an open conversation with them. Whereas if you have just a story that you're going off of, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this story tells me that there's somebody that starts with an A, and all of a sudden I have an error in here. Well, it's hard to put those pieces together and believe that. But when you have absolutely nothing to go off of, both you and Aaron had this M name involved, when we're in the midst of an investigation, it's hard not to proceed with that at that point. But it also validates that.
Sure. I think it's extremely hard to ignore it at that point. But what we can do is kind of switch mediums. Then we say, okay, now if we are both feeling this M person, we get a name, what have you, then we can turn to our equipment, call that person by that name, and then get them to interact. Then we're in the quantitative analysis rather than qualitative, and we can say, now here when I say that name, I get that reaction on that independent device. And now it's fun.
And to your point, after that fact, we bring out our equipment it makes that equipment, everything that happens with it, whether it lights up or not, much more, definitive.
Yeah, believable, right?
That. Right.
Absolutely. Right. So, got to go into the break here. So, when we return, we're going to be
How
moving
did that
from what
happen?
it's fun. So, we're going to go when we return. We're going to get moving from what we remember to what we actually see. Okay, now we're going to shift gears. Now we're getting out of our head. Now we're getting into our eyeballs. This is where we start to have a little bit of fun. We have some things to show everybody. We're going to talk about how darkness, fear, and lacking of complete understanding of what's around us, how that affects what we see. So hang with us after the ad break. I've had people say they kind of tail off after during the ads. Stay with us. We got a lot of cool stuff to talk about. We will be back in like 2.5 minutes.
Every ghost story and creature feature lies a far more terrifying truth. The real monsters wear human faces. In the chilling book, All Monsters Are Human, from Derrick Smith, 10 Twisted Tales expose the darkest parts of a human soul. From killers hiding in plain sight to obsessions turned deadly. Each story invites you to step into a shadowed world where morality unravels, and the only thing more terrifying than what lurks in the dark is who. These aren't just horror stories. They're reflections of ourselves, showing what happens when fear, rage, guilt, and desire take control. Visit nxmedia.com for more information on All Monsters Are Human from Derrick Smith. And you can purchase them at Amazon.com from nxmedia.com. If you are fascinated by the Sasquatch, Dogman, the Mothman, and the unexplained, this is the event you won't want to miss. Featuring special guest speakers D.A. Roberts, Scott Nelson, and Margie K. And guiding your experience throughout the day, MC Race Hobbs. Enjoy vendors and exhibits, Bigfoot call contests, costume contests, games and interactive events, and much more. Join us Saturday, September the 12th in Kansas City, Missouri for a full day dedicated to the world of cryptids and the paranormal. Register now at ozinstitute.org. That's ozinstitute.org. The truth, it's out there, and it's waiting for you. The Unexplained Network is your source for the best in paranormal programming, live video streaming, and audio streaming from hauntings, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids, and the ever-expanding realm of the unexplained. Listen live or on demand now on Spreaker, Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeart, and Pockets all over the World Wide Web. The Unexplained Network, where unexplained lives.
I wish we lived a little bit closer to Kansas City because I would love to go to that cryptid con. I think it looks like a lot of fun. You froze there for a second. What did you say?
I said we'd be there in a heartbeat.
We would be. I would love it. I wish we could get out there, but we will one day because I'm sure they'll redo it. So we're gonna I want to touch a little bit on Pareidolia. We talked about it before. Yeah. But this is going to set up a lot of discussion on the second half of this episode. For just to retune everybody's brain to it, Pareidolia is how we perceive our brain wanting to perceive a recognizable form based on something that it can see part of the information, and it pieces the gaps together and makes it something that our brains can understand.
Right.
Did I kind of summarize that well?
Yep. Okay. That's exactly right.
So that's like why people see faces in clouds. That's why we see like human shapes standing in curtains, like the old horror movies and everything else. And I have my mother, like So my mother's house is haunted. We've talked about that, and I'm sure we're going to touch on that, and we might investigate that one day. My mother actually, let's talk about that real quick. My mother last night, she lives in a 100-year-old house, and the ceiling to their house, it's old horsehair plaster. It's the wood lathe behind it. This ceiling has been hanging as a ceiling for 100 years this year.
Okay.
Well, the playroom where there was like an office where my mother used to work in there. Now it's a playroom for our kids. Half of the ceiling fell overnight. Well, they don't know if it was overnight Saturday night into Sunday or if it was while they were out on Saturday. Half of the ceiling fell.
Okay.
And mind you, these nails have been holding up this very heavy plaster for 100 years. They saw a crack form about a week before that, and then it fell. So now they have this absolute mess on their hands.
I'd say thankfully no one was there.
Right. She texted me later last night, and she said, Dan, I want your opinion. We've talked about how it's haunted. Her and I have talked about how their house is haunted. She has had numerous experiences there. She texted me to ask me if I felt, in my quote unquote professional opinion, that the ghost could have had something to do with the ceiling falling. Okay. And I said, Mom, unless your ghost is named Gravity, I don't think it's your ghost.
What if it was?
But it could be. Maybe that ghost just got so upset that now there's little kids smashing little kids' pianos and stuff in their room. But that's honest to God. And I'm not joking when I say that. That's what she asked me last night. That is how you create stories where there's no stories to be had.
Right. You're absolutely right. And then that stems from one to another, and then it blows up. Right.
Right. Yeah, and then 10 years, oh my God, I got to tell you about the one time our ghost ripped the ceiling down.
That's right.
And I'm not saying this to make fun of her by any means. I'm just saying
that's just how it works. That's how it happens. You're right.
Exactly. And this is how stories start. And we are all about stories. Don't get me wrong.
I'm never going to turn down a good story.
Correct. So back to the pareidolia stuff, right? I got that, like, it came to my head and I had to say it. But back to pareidolia. So the brain is highly prepared to recognize faces in human forms. We know that. That is a real, true fact that we have to deal with during an investigation.
And it makes it hard for investigations, to be honest
with
you.
It can, but it also makes for some really fun discussions.
It's true.
Right?
True. That's a whole different story, yes.
And I say all of this now because we're going to start getting into how darkness really plays with our imagination. Because again, in darkness, there is an unavailability of data.
Right.
For our brains to process. It just brings in a whole new layer of mystery and the unknown when things are very dark. Typically, we investigate with the lights off. Right. That is like
that's just because of our equipment.
To be expecting. That's a lot of it, right? A lot of it is because our equipment works on light.
Right.
Like it lights up whenever things go off. So if we have an entire room canvas with equipment, those lights will draw our attention to wherever the heck it is, and then we'll look there.
And we've been asked time and time again, do you investigate during the day? Like, yeah, we do.
We have actually had some really neat things investigating during the day.
Right. But most of the time, if we have the option, we're gonna investigate at night because of our tools, because of the environment around us. You're not going to have the people driving up and down the street at 2 a.m.
Usually, unless you're in Ohio, and there happens to be a sale on crotch rockets.
Then, then that's a whole different story. But anyway.
Yes. So we do investigate at night. We try to eliminate these outside factors. Then we bring our own factors into it, right? What is a big thing when we're looking at photography, like let's call it ghost photos or things that we think we captured something?
Sure.
What do we try to avoid at all costs when we're showing it to each other? very much like the spirit box. We purposely try not to show each other exactly what we think we're seeing.
Right. We don't want to tell each other.
Right. The second I show you a picture and I say, look at this guy standing there, what are you going to see?
Well, I'm going to look at that guy standing there.
That's exactly right.
There's so many times too, like we try to avoid the arrows, the circles, when we're looking at something, but when it comes down to it, social media wise, video wise, whatever we're doing, it makes more sense. But when we're sharing things one to another, we don't do that. We don't circle something. We don't put an arrow on something. It's a look at this picture. Tell me what you see. That makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, you're right. If you tell somebody you're looking for something, then yeah, I'm going to look for it too.
So Wendy, I want to show these videos. We have a couple of videos. These two videos are from one of our new favorite locations. We've actually had the owner of this location on, Cindy Kuhn, who is the owner of the Ross House in Bel Air, Ohio.
That we're going to get back to.
We are going to get back to. She's an absolute darling of a woman and one of the most genuine owners that we've ever run into doing 100%. This kind of stuff. So it's just like she's like intoxicating with her personality and everything. So we do have two examples of shadow figures that do not play into what we've been talking about, where we're not. I don't think we're forcing things on these ones. But we didn't have much evidence. We didn't talk about evidence last time, so we definitely wanted to show a couple videos for everybody. So this first one that I'm going to show is it's in the kitchen area where we had all of our equipment set up. There's a door, and that door goes into a bathroom. It's just a little bathroom, little powder room kind of thing. That door, as we were setting up,
we weren't expecting anything in this area, which is why all of our equipment was there.
But we also kind of were, if you remember, because whenever we were setting up, the door to the bathroom opened.
It did happen, yes, but there were no stories about it. That's right.
There were not. Well, I think Cindy had told us that people had experiences like
in the bathroom.
There was somebody in that bathroom.
Yes.
So to that point, we left a trail cam there.
Right.
And that is how we captured this. So in this video, you're going to see the light is on. That light turning on is what triggered the camera to turn on because it's a trail cam. But we wanted you to pay close attention. Well, you know what? Look at me. I'm setting it up.
There you go.
We just talked about this. I'm going to play it.
Okay, now we can talk about it.
So now we can talk about it. So Derrick, you were the one that reviews all of our evidence here. What are we looking at in this?
So when I'm looking at these trail cam images or videos, I'm looking a lot of the time at these motion cameras. We try to pair them up. So this motion light was paired up with this trail cam. Mm-hmm. And when I'm seeing this thing, it's like, there's the light going on. I'm like, all right, let's look a little bit more into this here. And so when I look at this, I actually see a shadow moving across that light. So the light turns on, it activates the motion camera, and then we're looking a little bit deeper. When we look deeper, you look at the back of the chair that's there, and you can actually see a shadow moving across that. And then you can play that again, and we can see if we can kind of pinpoint that here.
Yeah, so you'll see it start on the chair on the left.
Yes.
And it'll actually continues over across the chair on the right.
And you can see it there moving.
There, yep.
Right.
Yep, it's very subtle.
It's subtle, it's fast, but it's moving. I mean, you can absolutely see it moving across the back of that chair. It's as if it's moving across that room. And that's what activated the camera in the first place.
Yeah, it activated the light, which turned on the camera, and now we have movement, and There was nobody in this room. We
That's
know that
correct.
for a fact.
We know we were all outside of this room trying to investigate another area of the building. So there was nobody there at the time.
The trail cams are so clutch. I can't
you
believe
say that.
you...
You say that. It's me that they're clutch for. They save so much time and they make it so much easier to pinpoint things.
But I had to help set up the cameras before.
That's true.
With all the wire and stuff. That is more of what I was talking about. I don't care about your time. I don't. So
or the evidence review, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
So we started using trail cams. How long has it been? It's probably been like 5 years now. We got so caught up in the hype. Yeah. We got so caught up in like the ghost hunters hype and like ghost adventures and running wire and all this stuff. We ran
the wires to this like home hub thing where we had the monitors there. But at one point we're like, nobody is watching the monitors. Why are we doing this? Yeah. So we ran the wires to this hub for no reason, you know.
And it was probably 4 or 5 years that we did that.
We did it for a while. You're absolutely right.
We had hundreds of feet of wire. We had like a couple hundred hours of recordings that we didn't even know how to access.
That's true.
We could watch it locally, and that was it.
That was all we had. And, you know, we had to watch all 4 screens at once, or we trained a camera on the camera. You know, it was just, it was a mess. But yeah, there was no sense for it. You know, really, if you think about it, there was no reason.
No. So word to the wise, just from learning experience, the trail cams come in clutch because they film 10 to 15 second clips. And they only record when they see something. So your process for eliminating the extra stuff is so fast.
It helps so much. I mean, it'll be a day or two where I'll be able to send you guys like, hey, I'm here and I'm seeing a light up here. You know, let's take a deeper look into this. Exactly. And that's exactly how a situation like this happens.
So let's go into the second video from the Ross house. And we'll play it and then we'll tell you what we see. So this one's interesting. It's kind of the opposite of a shadow. It's a light.
So at first thought, you know, I'm thinking, okay, there's a car that's driving by. There's something external going in, right?
Sure.
Those windows, blinds, whatever, they were closed. There was nothing to come in that room. So,
and it's on the back of the house too. There's no it's like an alley, but there's there's no traffic back there.
That's right. There's nobody driving back there. So the next thought is, okay, that's somebody with a flashlight, right? Well, then we look at the timestamp and we realize, okay, we're all downstairs. You know, no one's up there at that point. So what could this possibly be? And this is where the, you know, deductive reasoning comes into play, and where we come into as a team and say, okay, let's look at this a little bit further.
Yep. So you'll see the flash of light. I think it's on a dresser, is it not? Like it's almost like towards the dresser side.
Yes, towards the dresser that's attached to a mirror.
Okay, let's play that one more time real quick. So what's interesting to me is there's a doll sitting there on the dresser. That light lights up that doll.
Yeah, 100%. And if you look close as well, there's also another very strange light anomaly in the hallway that can't be accounted for. So the light moves across the room, right? So from like, it looks like a chair that's sitting there on the left side, and then it moves to the dresser mirror combination on the right side. It almost looks as if somebody's moving across the room, and there's nobody there. So, you know, if somebody was there, it'd be easy. You know, that's an easy debunking, right? Sure. But so that's where we really have to figure out what's going on. Again, to our point about looking at external lights and features, you know, there's so many potentials as somebody looking outside in. where it could be an outside light, it could be a car light, it could be somebody's flashlight. But being that it's in the back alley, then that makes us think like, okay, there's nobody back there. There's no reason for somebody to be back there. Both sides are fenced off. So unless you're driving in, you're not going to be back there. So really, if you look at this room and you look at it in a big, a larger perspective, there's nothing that really signals us to a reason why this would occur.
Yeah. So we're going to piece this together now. So we talked about pareidolia, right? Now we're going to talk about darkness. What does darkness bring with it? It brings fear.
Difficulty.
It brings a difficulty seeing things. It brings fear. It heightens our awareness because we as predators do not like to be in darkness, because that is the only time we, as predators, the apex predator, are vulnerable. Is when
I was going to say predators or prey at that point. Yeah.
Very much so. Right. So now our senses are heightened. Now we are looking for any kind of movement that we could possibly see wherever we can see it. Right. And what we do is that our brain then brings in that pareidolia factor. Now we start to see shapes. And I want to show something that is super cool. It was actually AI that came up with this, but I think it's a great visual representation.
It absolutely is, because I think we've experienced things like this before.
Yeah, we have. So on the left-hand side, this is a very poorly lit room. Obviously, there's, what we could assume was like sunlight, or not sunlight, but like moonlight coming in the window, providing a very, very light casting of light onto a dark hallway. And you can see a figure. It looks like a tall man standing at the end of the hallway. Well, when you turn the lights on, that man that was there is now a coat rack with a coat hanging on it.
Right.
So this is what we're talking about when we say darkness changes what we see, right? And this is something that we have to, right. And how do we address this? The way that we have started to address it is that initial walkthrough video. Right.
And it's happened time and time again where we utilize that walkthrough video to confirm where things are. Exactly like this. So if we're seeing a picture here, we're able to watch that walkthrough live, like right then and there, and say, okay, this is what's here. This is already in the spot. And okay, there's a coat rack here that's making the figure outline. As for the legs, you got the base of the coat rack, and you got the leg of the tripod there. So we're able to put those things together exactly like that.
Yeah. So it's easy. It's easy to misinterpret what we're seeing,
especially in the moment, right? I mean, like you said, when fear takes control, there's that heightened sense where you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And you can be as experienced as you want. When something frightening happens, you're jumping, you're stepping back, and then your brain takes control, whether you like it or not.
Yep. Another way that we're trying to combat this recently during investigation, so we do that initial walkthrough of a space so that if we think we see something, we have something to go back on with the lights on that shows the entire space. Is there something that we could be misconstruing, like a coat rack as a person standing at the end of that hallway? What we are also doing is we're trying to get away from using white light flashlights.
Yes.
Right? So when we are in the dark, our eyes take a period of time to adjust. Our pupils have to dilate. We have to let more light in so that we can start to see something, like to see our surroundings, right? What we found through research is red light does not make your pupils dilate.
And I think we've been doing this for over a year for sure, but we could tell a difference. There's a clear difference in using these flashlights. These red light flashlights, and that was one of the best transitions that we've made.
Right. So I said it backwards. It's actually that the white light makes our pupils shrink, they don't dilate, they shrink. So if we're using the white light flashlight, our pupils shrink, and then when we turn them off, now we're going to start seeing things because we really don't have a good sense, right?
So with the red light, it's not going to change that.
Exactly. So now we're able to walk around without falling over ourselves but running indoors and stuff.
Also
without that happening. Yeah, very much so. Now, what I can't help is I can't find any red light flashlights, and if there's anybody listening that knows of red light flashlights that don't have the strobe effect that come up whenever you hit a button a couple times.
We would buy them in a heartbeat.
please reach out. Please comment on the video. Please let us know where we can find those, because the only ones we can find have strobe effect. And like, I've almost become epileptic during an investigation because of it.
And it just kind of happens naturally because you press the button twice and it's like, whoops, sorry.
Absolutely. So it's something that bites us with this quite often. Like, we try to avoid the white light, but our equipment has lights on it, and that throws us off so much. And Derrick, that's been one of the downfalls for you early on that has gotten you away from investigations as far 100%. As like really becoming involved in them, which was you just
focusing on these. Yeah,
you like to stare at the technology, and you didn't get to experience it, right? Because your eyes were never really allowing you to experience it.
You're right. I mean, and the biggest thing was staring through these cameras, right? Mm-hmm. And it would never allow my eyes to adjust. But what we've done is we've transitioned to both the trail cams and just stationary cameras, where we're able to take these handheld cameras that we have, which are nice, and we're able to just put them in a corner. We put them in the corner of the room. We just let it run, hands off. And that has helped tremendously. As far as I'm concerned, yes. I basically removed myself from these investigations without realizing it by staring through these cameras.
Yeah.
Waiting for something to happen.
It's easy to do.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating, though, because the difference between setting these things down and walking away, or paying attention, focusing in on these investigations, than focusing on the equipment, the technology. There's a big difference there. We're talking about what our eyes can see. You add that little screen of a camera and it makes it that much worse.
Absolutely. All right, so Derrick, let's bring it all full circle. So we talked about a lot of things over the last 2 episodes.
We always do.
We do. But we want to do it justice, right? We want to do these kind of conversations. We want to give it its right due. So to bring everything into perspective, first of all, if somebody lays out expectations and tells us what might happen, then that leads to confirmation bias.
That's right.
It helps. It starts for us to start not seeing things that aren't there, but kind of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 sometimes, just because we're told that it's bigger.
And it hurts the investigation in the long run. Mm-hmm. Our whole goal is to figure out what's going on, and that does not help. That helps. What that does is that kind of pushes us in a certain direction, which may not actually be existent.
Exactly, and that non-existence then leads to pareidolia.
That's right.
Right, the pareidolia. We take unclear information, we make it into a recognizable form, which can look like a ghost.
That's right.
Right. Then after the pareidolia, now that we think we see that figure, now we're afraid. Now Now we feel threatened. Now we feel that there's something happening that we can't control.
Our senses heighten to a certain extent that we cannot control, exactly like you said. And that's beyond our control. That's just, it is what it is. That's kind of human. That's just us as a human, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Whether we want it to happen or not, it occurs. And that we want to try to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, and we have to kind of break that cycle the best we can. We have to try to find ways to eliminate the variables, make more constant of a quote-unquote experiment of an investigation, take ourselves out of the horror story that we've been concocting in our head for the weeks leading up to it, and really just fall back on the quantitative assessment of what's happening around us through our devices, through our experiences.
It can absolutely be hard, but we just need to take the scientific approach to it, and that's what we're trying to do in the long run.
Absolutely. So we are out of time, Derrick. It's been a pleasure. We got
always.
We've had 2 hours now to explore how expectation, confirmation bias, pareidolia, memory, fear, low light vision, they can all influence our experiences that feel completely paranormal, right?
Right.
None of these explanations require a witness to be dishonest. A person can sincerely hear a voice, see a figure, feel threatened, while still misunderstanding what's produced in an experience. So recognizing the possibility doesn't weaken the paranormal investigation, but it does challenge us to document those experiences more carefully. Now we're talking quantitative, right? Get the data.
Right.
So in our next episode, we're going to talk about some very controlled haunted room experiments, which I think is going to be, it's really fun. I started to put that together. It's actually a really fun topic. So we're going to start looking at what's called haunted room experiments. We're going to see what they teach us, and really begin developing how we do what we do, how we have developed the standard to how we approach investigations.
I think we did it naturally, but that's a good way to approach it.
For sure. So tonight is over. It's time to leave the unknown behind and make our way back safely across the bridge. Thank you once again to everybody for joining us. We really appreciate the conversation. Always keep an open mind about paranormal possibilities and the limitations of human perception. Until next time, everybody, we will see you on the other side of the bridge.
And Dan would say, smash that like button.
Like and subscribe and smash that like button. And we say, toodles noodles.
See you guys. Thank you.
See ya.